Good morning, everybody. Great to see you guys. Episode 4, right?
Yeah,
of
rocking
the
and rolling.
Real Estate OT.
Stacking 'em.
Loving it. Yeah. Josh here.
Len here.
Jason?
Awesome to see you guys again. Hope everyone's doing well out there. Things are definitely heating up a little bit compared to the start of this year, so that's fantastic news. Rates have come down a little bit. You guys have seen more activity in the real estate?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Fed's
Definitely.
been nice to everybody.
Oh, man.
Recently.
Yesterday was great.
Yeah.
We were talking, the S&P did great yesterday. Rates saw a
Stock
nice
market, everything,
pickup.
yeah.
That's
It's been
outstanding.
good to watch. Yeah, it was interesting. So one of the members of our team posted something this morning. One of the, I won't name the builder, but there was a local builder that when the market was just going absolutely insane, they made a corporate decision.
Dude, call him out.
Well, they're our friend again, apparently.
Not
But
really.
They made a corporate decision to just not pay realtors at all. So if you brought a client to their build, there was no commission at all.
Well, that wasn't just one builder.
Well,
I
they
think
were
there
the
were
one who-
multiples that
Well,
started
most
doing
of them
that.
dropped
No?
it down pretty
Yeah.
low, but they were
Okay.
kind of the pioneers. in
Right. I don't
screwing
know of
with
another
realtors.
one that offered
pay
zero.
nothing?
Nothing.
Wow. Nothing.
Zero.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
you can, they said, oh, you can still bring your agent,
You just
It's
won't
not
get
gonna
paid.
pay 'em.
but we're not going to pay them. So in other words, you'll have to do a buyer broker. And
Yeah, and so I mean, obviously our job as realtors is to represent our buyers. So if they wanted this product, we brought them to them. But unfortunately, we this is what we do for a living.
Sure, you gotta
This
get
is
paid.
Charity. So unfortunately, we had to hand that cost over to our buyers, which it really sucked having that, to have to do that. But it was what it was. But
you
long
want to
story
explain
short,
that? You just said what it was.
Well, I mean,
Broker-buyer agreement.
yeah, basically, so,
Explain
it works this way too if you go to any listing where they're not paying the buyer's agent, because they are out there. They're
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
they're far and few between because most of them know that they just won't end up with as many showings. I mean, that's not the way it's supposed to work, but
Human
that's
nature
that's
takes
the
over.
that's the way you tend to see it coming from the listing agent's perspective,
Oh,
and not from the buyer.
100% human nature.
So what you have to do, what happens then is you still have to get paid, so you have to do a buyer broker agreement, basically saying that for your work you're going to get compensated 3% is typical. Sometimes it's different, just depends on the agent. So what happens is the buyer ends
per
up paying
RESPA,
those
it's
fees.
totally negotiable.
Yeah, totally
so
negotiable.
Each agent gets to choose what they believe they're worth.
Right.
And so that's where the could be a different number, but
Well-
for me, I like 3%.
3%. And I bring that up just for educating our listeners. I don't think a lot of buyers realize
No.
that they don't pay anything for your guys' services. Is that correct?
99.9%
In a
of the
normal-
time, it's all wrapped into the
Sorry,
price
let
of
me
the house.
rephrase that. In a
Yeah.
normal situation, the buyers don't pay anything to use your services, correct?
Correct.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So I just wanted to get that out there.
Now, I have also had some instances, because you'll see some of the, I'm not going to name them in particular, but some of the iBuyer
Correct.
platforms,
Yeah.
they're only paying a minimal percentage, and a lot of times we'll have buyer broker agreements, and then the buyer ends up paying the difference
Gotcha.
up to what your contracted agreement
Yeah.
is.
The long story short, to kind of wrap that back up, is this builder in particular sold more homes in the month of January of 2023 than they did in January 2022.
Okay.
I'm like, what year is it?
Is that because they changed their?
Well, so it's a conversation of they changed, they're now cooperating again with agents.
Okay, gotcha.
They're buying down the rate like crazy.
Right.
I mean, they've been advertising that they'll
They
give
have their
you-
own lender?
Yeah, they have their own lender, in-house lender, and they're giving like 4.5%,
Right.
which is a huge buy down.
Huge, because
I
they're
mean-
they're taking it from the profit on the
Oh, big time.
on the home sale and giving
And they
it.
dropped their prices. So we've seen that across the board. We've seen a lot of builders drop their prices.
What would you say, like, price drops are you guys seeing with builders?
With these guys, they dropped about 75 to 100,000 across the board, I think, on a lot of their stuff. And they were buying
Wow,
down the rate
75,000 to 100 grand.
compared to the peak of last year.
Wow.
So I've seen some different things too. So on the appraisal side, I do some work directly for some
Right.
builders. And at first, it was funny. At first, what they were doing was they were upping their incentives, right? And then they weren't raising the prices, but they try to do everything they can to avoid lowering
Right.
the base prices. But in the last couple months, they lowered them. Interestingly enough, I was showing buyers properties for this particular builder the other day, and they actually told me they did a base price increase last week of $2,000.
Wow.
So, I mean, all of this goes into play of what's happening in our market right now. You're
changing.
starting to see a change spring market's coming. Builders really analyze this data when they do their base price changes. So as you see the builders starting to increase,
The
it kind
seller
of gives you a
desperation
picture.
is- Yeah, the seller desperation is disappearing.
Yep, and then the builder you were talking about that was not paying agents at all. I had a buyer the other day trying to do something with them, but they won't even do contingencies at all.
Is this Karen?
Yeah, at
Gotcha,
all. They won't
gotcha.
do contingencies.
Right.
So there's just, they build a great home. People like the floor plans. Their business management is questionable.
They have more restrictions. That's what I was telling
Yep.
Karen. I was like,
Yeah.
I told her, when I talked to her on the weekend, I was like, I'd love to help you again, and I'm not going to be able to match, $20,000, $30,000 in incentives. So I'm not going to tell you not to go to the builder, but I said you're going to have a way different service experience.
Yeah.
It's completely different.
Yep.
And then, so you were saying, to bring it back to what you were saying, in January this year, the builder
Sold more homes than they did January of
last year, and you think it's tied to
I'm sure there's a
realtors,
couple
Prices, for
realtors
one.
wanting to
Well,
bring people there?
realtors.
I think it's a combination of we were still dealing with supply chain issues a
Okay.
year ago, so they could only sell a certain amount of homes per month at a certain point during
Gotcha.
COVID, which means they can only close a certain amount of homes per month. But I think when you look at like the influx of new sales, it's a combination of everything. Realtor friendly again, massive incentives, huge price drops. I mean, from the appraisal side, you've had to help force the builder's hands, but some of the builders have looked at and said, look, you're under contract at $699. We just dropped our price to $650. We're not going to charge you $699 because they know this guy's going to come in and say it's not worth $699 anyways.
Right.
And so we saw that go across the board. It's just interesting to kind of watch this like correction. And now that things have, in my opinion, corrected, it's like, okay, now we're taking off again and going, okay, we're
Yeah.
back at a landing spot. Another agent posted something in our group this morning that there was an article that Phoenix was in the top 5 of markets that lost the most appreciation
Okay.
in the last year. And I look at that and go, that's awesome, because that means we got nowhere to go back but up.
Right.
If we've taken that big of a hit, I don't see a double dip, right? That's the conversation. Oh, the market's going to crash, and I keep saying, like, already did.
Yeah.
Like, you've already missed that opportunity.
Yeah, and to your point, it may have regressed a certain amount, but it's not nearly as much
Oh,
as we've
yeah.
gained.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, no.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just a correction. So, I mean, like people get caught up in crash, the word crash.
Right.
Yeah.
I throw charts at them all day long and hey, this,
Show me.
like we talked about in previous episodes, 60,000 listings in 2008 on the market, 60,000. We're at 15,000 right now.
We've
like
had
it's
a
not
big
even
decrease,
close.
actually.
Yeah, we went from 20
Right.
to 15.
An
The-
interesting stat I looked at to look up, and I don't have it off the top of my head, but as you say that, what was the population of the Phoenix metro area in 2008 when there was 60,000 listings for sale compared to what it is now? I mean, I think it's almost double.
We have way more now. 100%.
Yeah.
So
That's a
you
great
got
point.
less inventory, more people.
More people. Yeah.
And it's like, and I would venture to say that industry is better now.
Oh, droves of people are coming here.
Oh, the corporations that we've brought
Oh,
in the
yeah.
last 8 years alone,
Massive.
it's huge.
Just the 303, that
Oh,
loop
yeah.
out there
Oh, yeah.
has brought in so much.
And they're
business.
building out there still
Yeah.
like crazy. Big
Yeah.
companies, you know
I
what I
had
mean?
read somewhere at one point when the market crashed in '08 that over 50% of the jobs here were all related to tourism.
Oh, yeah.
So I think I read this right around the time that they were closing down for COVID, because when COVID obviously shut everything down, the biggest industries that got hurt were the service industry.
Sure,
So
travel,
waiters,
yeah.
travel,
Absolutely.
hotels. But the article I read at this time, so obviously this is back in '21, they were saying that the biggest difference was that at this point in time, I think it was only like 30% or 36% of jobs are in hospitality.
Okay.
Whereas when the market crashed in '08, it was over 50%.
Oh, I believe
And
that.
so that's why we didn't see a massive kill shot when we shut down for 60 days. And then when we opened back up, I mean, it just went haywire here.
Yeah.
Because we were open and California was closed, and people in California were like, screw this, I'm out of here. Like, I want to go hiking, I want to go, biking, I want to live my life. And 5 hours away they are.
Right.
So we saw
Oh.
this massive influx.
Good point. Good point. Hey, let's talk a little bit about an appraisal issue, and then maybe we'll talk about a little bit lending.
All right.
Let's relate it back to what Len and you were talking about. When a home, like you were just saying, doesn't appraise for sales price, what happens? What-
Well, so I mean, from where I'm sitting, I don't always get all the details. Sometimes I do because they'll come back to me and ask me to change the contract price on the appraisal.
Well, both from the appraisal side and the realtor side.
Okay.
Like what happens in that situation?
Well, so when any home doesn't appraise,
Uh-huh.
basically what happens, let's just say the contract price is 500,
Okay.
the appraisal comes in at 490.
Perfect.
Okay, so now what happens is it's going to go back. The buyer's agent is now going to go back to the other agent, to the
Okay.
listing agent, and say, hey, we got a problem here. We were contracted at 500. Now we have an appraisal at 490, and now it's going to be open up to negotiations. In the market a year ago, the buyer was basically just going to have to take 10 grand out of their pocket and make it happen.
In fact, they put that in paper up front.
Yep.
They would.
In the
What do you-
last few
Explain that.
months, okay.
Explain
yeah.
that to.
Well, so they were doing what we would call an appraisal waiver,
Okay.
saying no matter where the appraisal comes in, if the contract price is 500, that seller will get 500,000. That was how the contract was
Okay.
written. Whether the appraisal came in at 425 or it came in at 490, now
It's pretty
not
scary, right? Kind of scary.
There's a lot of faith
So-
that goes into that. So what we saw, every very, very, very little, if it came in that low, if it came in at 425, and it was a contract at 500, not every buyer had $75,000 of cash sitting
Right.
at the bank. And so the way the contract was written is if that appraisal came in at 425, that buyer cannot close. And so the question then became now a conversation of, do you use the loan rejection to get the earnest money back? Is there a fight over earnest money?
Right.
And
That's true.
that became a whole broker situation, and sometimes it got ugly, sometimes it
Sure.
was clean and easy, but
Yeah, and there was multiple phases to that, right? So there was a point in the process where it was so crazy that you had to completely waive the appraisals.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it got to a point where it wasn't maybe quite as crazy, and then what you saw was appraisal gap.
yeah.
Um,
Well, it started there, and then it worked up to full, then it worked its way back down to gap.
And so
then-
how that works is you can say basically,
An escalation clause? Is that what you guys?
well,
were
no,
talking
not
about?
an escalation clause, it's a gap. So you say the
Oh, I see
buyer
what you're
is
saying.
willing to pay up
Up
to
to.
$10,000 more than the appraised value.
Gotcha.
So
not
now,
to exceed the purchase price, so that was always the key
Yeah.
thing to add in there. So we'd have to tell this, the seller, be like, look, if it comes in at 500,000, it doesn't mean that now your buyer's gonna jump up to 510.
Right.
It's just that if it came in at 490, they'll still guarantee the
Correct.
500.
and it got really complicated for a while, and then luckily Arizona came in and actually added an additional clause form, what's a clause?
Yeah, additional clause addendum.
Additional clause
Yeah, 'cause
addendum
we were
form.
cowboying it for
Yeah,
a
we
while.
were. I mean, our
Right.
broker would give us. The brokers
Yeah.
would put out their own language for it.
Sure.
But then AAR came in and developed a form for it, and they
Yeah.
had standard material in there
'Cause
to
we'd
cover
see all
it.
sorts
They're
of
pretty
cool
good
stuff.
about that, or
Yeah, and
keeping up with things and getting
I
new
would say
forms?
so.
yeah, they make changes pretty often, and then
Yeah.
the only thing. So like from my perspective, which is maybe a little bit different than where yours was. We'll talk about that. Is being an appraiser of 20 plus years. I am dead set against waiving appraisals.
Gotcha.
When it comes to my buyers. So now that doesn't mean I haven't written one. Like they're just, no, we want this house.
Right.
We're willing to do it. Okay, if you're willing to do it, as long as you understand what you're doing. And so my job is just to walk you through the process of what you're doing. And if you're okay with it, we'll do it. But appraisal waivers are really scary in my opinion.
Because they could come back. I mean, it's pertinent information, and we were using those in Illinois too. So we weren't just waiving appraisals here in Arizona. I saw it across the country.
Right.
So with our inventory as low as it is, with rates, continuing to drop, with the Fed slowing down,
Right.
those are all key indicators that say that we could eventually.
Get back to there.
I think we
may
will.
We'll probably see a little bit of it this
I think
spring.
we'll see a little bit, at least the gaps.
Yeah.
I think we'll see here in the spring, because as our supply ticks down and our demand really starts to heat up,
Right.
and now, yesterday, we're seeing interest rates start to drop a little bit. If we see those drop back under 5 and get into some of that territory, I mean, the buyers are going to be out in droves.
Right.
Again.
We're going to see some of those gaps at least, and possibly waivers, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
All right. Two more things, and maybe we'll move on to some loan programs. But you guys could talk about this. So when there is a issue with an appraisal where it doesn't come in, both parties have the ability to drop out, right?
Yep.
Okay. Talk about a little bit about that, and then secondly, I know that we did this a couple times during that time period, and I've done it even right now. I've got an escrow where we're doing it. Explain the 10-day inspection period, and the ability to get out of a contract during that time period.
Okay.
And the reason I bring that up is because we were getting appraisals back during that
waiving.
time period
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
to make a decision for the client.
I'll let you
You know what
talk
I'm
about this
talking
one
about?
because you love the Binzer period.
Yeah, so I mean, first we'll start by me personally. So a lot of my work is with Josh. So I will coordinate, and hopefully most agents do this as well. I coordinate, and we have the agreement that he's not going to order the appraisal until I tell him to order the appraisal.
Correct.
Or we have those conversations. Not I tell him, but we have those
Yeah,
conversations.
You say, hey, order it. You
Yeah,
tell me.
because really,
Yeah.
honestly, it's like I don't want to order an appraisal before the inspection period's over, because if my buyer's like, look, I'm not going forward, I don't want him to pay for
Waste
the
the money.
appraisal.
And that's how I would say 95% of realtors.
Yeah.
do.
But it's crazy. I'm in a deal right now. I'm in the inspection period, and the appraiser is going out there today. So to me, as the listing agent, I'm going,
And it's intense. It's like it.
there was a lot of stuff on the Binzer.
Yeah.
They sent the Binzer in, but then they ordered the appraisal. And when they ordered the appraisal, I feel like leverage goes into my corner a little bit.
Well, that's another thing that I was going to talk about is you feel like if they've already ordered the appraisal, they're committed, and you
Exactly.
you don't
That-
have to give as much.
That's why we don't order the appraisal till after the inspection
Exactly.
period. So I mean, I'm looking at this and I'm feeling a little nervous because there's a bunch of stuff on the Binzer, right, on the inspection request form, and I'm looking at it and I'm digging through it, and then the appraisal order comes in, and I'm like,
They really
oh,
want this place.
okay, you know, it seems like they're moving forward,
Yeah.
and so that's the conversation I'm having with my seller is, look, we may not need to do this, and this. You know what I mean? So, you know, let's do some of the stuff in good faith, because you should have a good working air conditioner. You should
Yeah.
fix the broken window, but maybe we don't need to fix the dry rot. Maybe we don't need to do some of
Right.
that stuff because they've already dove in. I mean, this is a multifamily property that I'm talking about. That appraisal's got to be
Oh, yeah.
$1,000.
Dang near close to it.
And
yeah.
the home inspection has got to be $500. So now they're in $1,500. Are they going to back out over some dry rot? I mean, there's a possibility.
Sure, but to your point, they're more invested.
They're more
Yeah,
invested.
100%,
So,
100%. And then let's talk about, like I said, the shortfall. When that comes in, both parties can just say, hey, we're out, or
Yep. On the appraisal,
what
yeah.
is
Yeah, the buyer has the opportunity to, so let's just, in a role play, Jason's
Sure.
the seller, I would just reach out to him and say, look, the appraisal came in at $490, the buyer's requesting that the purchase price be dropped to
Okay.
$490. Now, he can come back and he can say, no,
right?
yes, or how about $495? And then so you've got like 3 days, and it's written in the contract, I think you have 3 days to basically request.
Negotiate, huh?
Yep, and then as the market goes, so in this market, I would try to split the difference. And if he was game and my guy's game, then boom, we've got it settled. In the market a year ago, the buyer's going to cover it.
With everything,
In the
right.
market 2 months ago, the seller's going to have to eat it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Isn't that
So-
weird how things have changed so
Oh,
quickly?
man.
Yeah.
I mean, I've called listing agents and been like, look, my buyer is not willing to pay a penny over appraisal. And sometimes it's 30 grand, and that seller has a quick decision to make, which is,
Right.
do I accept this?
Or relist, huh?
Or relist. And relisting is, in a normal market, relisting is a curse of death.
Explain that.
Well, it's a stigma, right? So
Okay.
the house goes on the market, it goes under contract. This tells a story. That market time tells a story.
Why is
it's-
that important?
Well, if it takes 2 months, that means that it was overpriced.
Right.
If it goes fast, that means it was a highly sought after property and it was
Gotcha.
priced right. Now, if you go back on the market in less than 10 days or right at about 10 to 12 days, then every agent knows, okay, something happened in the inspection
Yep.
period.
Okay.
So I'm making a call to Jason as the listing agent going, so what's up? What happened? Like, my buyer really likes the house, but how bad was that inspection report? Now, you go even further, and let's just say that, we go back to this 500 story, and now we're 3 weeks into it, and it goes back on the market, but
Right.
they're still at 500. He's kind of got to tell me that there was an appraisal issue.
Right.
I mean, he's not contractually obligated to tell me there was an appraisal issue.
What
but-
would you say if you were on the other side?
It
of that?
depends. There's so
It
many
really
variables,
depends.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
like the situation I have on the multifamily that I'm talking about, which is a completely different market than single
Totally.
family, but so the multifamily has more demand. There's less stuff available, and
Sure.
investors are trying to get in.
More sought after.
My guy's like, if it appraises low, I'm not going down.
Sure.
And I brought that forward ahead of time to the other agent, so they already know that, and that's going to be, if it comes in low, that's going to be the scenario.
Sure.
And then the investor has to decide, which the investors are making decisions based on
numbers.
cap rates and based on, income, cash flow, all that
sure.
kind of stuff.
Sure.
There's no emotion to it. They don't
Right.
love the property.
Yeah.
They love the money.
Completely different
Yeah.
buyer, right?
So
Yeah.
it's
Totally.
it's an income thing rather than a sales comparison or whatever. So if it appraises low, if the numbers are still right, that's all they care about.
And there is instances, I mean, and this is where I know Jason was really insistent, was he was working in his career as an appraiser to be the highest level of appraisal possible. But there are some, and I know you talked about this previously with the management companies, where you've got the appraiser, basically the lowest bidder wins the appraisal. And there are times where I'll get an appraisal back and it says 490, and I'm like, dude, we priced it at 500 when here's a comp for 510, here's a comp for 515, here's a comp for 525. So in that instance, if I go back on the market, I'm probably not gonna have a hard time telling the buyer's agent, say, look, we had a really horrible appraisal and the buyer wasn't willing to switch lenders or do whatever they needed to do to get a new appraisal, so we're back on the market. Now,
Gotcha.
if I look at the comps and I'm like, yeah, that appraiser they were generous at 490, I'm gonna have a harder time disclosing that to the other agent, because my job is to represent my seller, which is to get them the most money possible.
Gotcha.
So that kiss of death becomes, you've got this stigma on it, and there's an old saying, especially in a normal market, your first offer is typically your best offer. And so when I get an offer in a normal market, I'm typically trying, especially if I've been on the market for 2-3 weeks and I haven't had any offers, that first offer, I'm gonna do everything I can to not only
Keep
get it
it.
under contract, but to get it through the Binzer period and get it through appraisal and get it closed.
So it sounds, kind of to wrap this up and maybe wrap up this episode, it sounds like it's all about leverage.
Oh, totally.
Is that what you guys are
every
explaining?
part of it, every
Yeah.
single part of it has its own part of leverage into the
Constant
deal.
strategy.
Yep.
I mean, pricing is a strategy, marketing is a strategy, negotiating is a strategy, the Binzer, everything is.
This is why
Yeah.
homes where agents are involved sell for more than for sale by offer homes.
Right.
Because there's
Yeah.
so many different things that we can negotiate out that a typical homeowner just doesn't know what to do with.
Well, and there's so many times where I always say, like, if the buyer and seller actually spoke to each other sometimes, how many times has your buyer or
Dang it.
your seller cursed you out, not personally?
Right.
Who do these people think they are? Da, da, da. They were like, you just know that if the buyer and seller were talking,
Oh, of course.
they'd be in a fist fight, they'd be screaming at each other, the deal would be dead,
Well, let-
and then you still close the thing.
Well, let's wrap up with this, because
Yeah.
there's different. All the realtors I've worked with over the past 17 years have different views on this.
Yeah.
Your guys' take, is it better to try to be friendly and try to work as best you can as you're representing a buyer with the listing agent, or do you go into it with a mindset of, hey, I'm going to totally wreck this guy, I'm going to try to get as nasty as I can and try to get the best deal I can? What have you found out over your years of real estate that works the best?
I don't know. Like, I go with the first one.
Okay.
You know,
I think
catch
most-
more bees with honey
Sure,
than you do
okay.
with vinegar type thing.
Gotcha.
You know, I'll still drop my expertise and use data in my
Sure.
corner when I need to do stuff. Like, I had an agent recently where there were some Binzer items and things like that, and my conversation with them was strictly like, this is all cosmetic stuff that your buyer should have seen when they walked through, and other times I'll throw the inspector under the bus, because in my opinion, the inspector's saying stuff that's out of their level of expertise, and all they're doing is scaring a buyer.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we could
So-
have a whole conversation on inspectors.
Oh, yeah.
So-
Presentation is
Big
huge, and yeah,
So I'll use those to my advantage and be bold about it.
Sure.
But for the most part, I'll do it in a way that's like, look, come on, Josh, you know that this inspector shouldn't have said all this stuff to your buyer. They just scared the guy.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, my sellers, they're not gonna drop $5,000 because, XYZ.
For a $200 repair.
Yeah, it's
smoke
like,
detectors or
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah.
So you level with people and be like, come on. And I research every person I do a cross sale deal with. I've done it since day one.
What kind of research do you do?
I'll just jump online, I'll put in their name, and how many transactions have you
Okay.
done in the last couple of years? So am I
Gotcha.
dealing with an active agent who's like,
So
this
you're
is
looking
full-time?
for experience level.
And if
kind
they're
of.
new, I'm not gonna necessarily take advantage of them, but I'll try to educate them and coach
Sure.
them, because I know that they're basically just listening and taking orders on their side.
Right.
And so I'll help them lead their client to the solution that I needed to. And I know
Gotcha.
you do the same thing.
Yeah, except for I don't mind taking advantage of them. I
Well-
mean, that's my duty. So,
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I'm not trying to be a jerk, but like a new agent, if I can see it, you spot it out.
Yeah.
You know, you have an upper hand in the negotiating.
Sure.
So you're going to use it.
Right.
And I know he will too, but I'm just.
I just do it in a different way.
Yeah,
So,
different.
so it sounds
Different tactic.
it sounds like you guys have the mindset of trying to represent your buyer or seller to the best of your
That's
ability,
who we represent.
being professional, but stern with your data, your knowledge. Your
Data is
experience.
big for our team.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
We're big on data.
And keeping our mouth shut too. So I mean, like a lot of times last year, I mean, Jason and I had 2 deals going almost simultaneously that we could probably point to and go, these were the peak. And they were crazy type, like the offers were insane as far as they went. And so I had this property that backed up to a very busy street, and it was loud and it was noisy, and the house wasn't in that great a condition.
Okay.
And we had it listed, I think, at like $695, and the first offer came in at $720. And then the second offer came in at $720, and I used them against each other to get $735. And the reality is they probably could have battled it out for $695. But my job was to represent the
yeah,
sellers.
and you didn't have
if I
to-
would have opened up my mouth and said, "Look, you're the only offer. You didn't need to come in at $720."
Right.
That would have taken $20,000 to $30,000 out
your
of my buyers.
pocket.
But
my
this
seller's
story
pockets.
gets so much better. You have to finish how
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
let's
works.
so-
let's end the episode with this.
Okay.
So I called the losing agent, and I'm like, "Hey, I'm really sorry." She's just through the sky pissed because she's lost deal after deal after
Oh,
deal.
sure, that's how it was
And I
back
said,
then.
but Jason's got a listing that's coming on that's actually nicer than this one. That's only 2 blocks away, or a block and a half, whatever it was. It was close. Send him his way, and then I'll let you tell your side of the story because they had a list price in mind, and it ended up like 40,000 over that.
Yeah,
or more.
yeah. So we were gonna list at like
Did they end
six.
up getting it though?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
We were gonna list at like 695 because that's just what the comps were a little
Yeah.
different in that neighborhood.
Uh-huh.
So Lynn sent them over my way, but when my sellers found out that the other house was priced at 725,
Well,
whatever.
that it went under contract at 735.
It's
So
a-
we're still pending
Sure.
at 735, and
When my sellers found out that the other contract was 735, and then they looked at the listing,
they're like, oh,
they were like, "Oh no, we want at least 735."
Right.
We sold for 735.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Hey,
And
win-win for
and
everybody.
it was cash, no appraisal.
Yep.
It was and then the market.
Right.
I
But
mean,
this
like,
is-
Talk about great timing, huh?
oh yeah,
Wow.
my sellers. I mean, I still
They
talk
love
to
you.
them. They're in
Oh.
Iowa now, and they're like, we got out at the perfect time, and this worked out because we literally never hit.
you never
the
went
market.
online.
Sure.
We didn't hit the market.
No, you never went on the MLS.
Never went on MLS. We didn't
That's
because
awesome.
it just. I mean, it was one deal fell into
And
the other.
You probably got to double side it. No.
No.
No, because I sent
Oh.
the agent over to him.
Yeah.
that
Gotcha.
lost.
So you took the other side, huh?
No. Nope.
Oh, that agent got it. I
The
got
other
it. Gotcha,
agent
gotcha.
got
He
Yeah,
sent the
yeah.
losing agent
The
on his
agent,
deal
right.
to me.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So
No.
But this is where I say, like, the leverage is key in
Yeah.
the knowledge and learning when to shut your mouth. Because there's times where
Just keep quiet, right?
well, Jason will instruct like the agents on our team, like just call the agent and let them talk.
Right.
Yeah.
Let them hang themselves.
But this
Yeah.
this is another big thing in this is one of the benefits of being on a team.
Sure.
Is because he took the losing agent from that one, sent him directly to me. All of a sudden, instead of closing 735, we closed 1.5.
Right.
Just
You know what I
like
mean?
that.
Yeah.
Just like that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, this episode's wrapping up. Next episode, we're going to dive into some loan programs from the lending side, see how it affects the real estate side as well. Hope you stay tuned for more information. This is Josh signing off for the Real Estate Overtime.
Len Nevin.
Jason Hubbard.
Have a great week, guys.
See
Bye.
you guys next time.